everybody. Welcome to Jack-O-Lantern Tales for the Little Ones. I'm Joyce Slater. I'm your storyteller today. We're going to start out with a little song, and it goes like this. Maybe you can repeat it with me. I'm a jack-o'-lantern, orange and stout, 2 black eyes and a smiling mouth. When you light me up, I shine so bright, watching over you through the night. Can you do it again with me? All right, let's try it. I'm a jack-o'-lantern, orange and stout, 2 black eyes and a smiling mouth. When you light me up, I shine so bright, watching over you through the night. All right, here we are with Jack-O'-Lantern Tales today. I'm going to start with one that's a little bit scary, but not too scary. It's about a giant caterpillar. Once upon a time, there were 3 boys. Count them. 1, 2, 3. That's right. And they were going to the grocery store for their mother. They were walking along when suddenly, right there on the road, there was a gigantic caterpillar. It was as wide as the whole road, and it was bright green. It had big orange horns, big red lips, and big black eyes. Now, the boys didn't know what to do. They said, "Oh no, what are we going to do?" The littlest boy went right up to the caterpillar and he said, "Would you please get off the road?" He said that magic word. You remember that magic word? That's right. And you know what? That caterpillar, let's take our finger and be a caterpillar. That caterpillar crawled off the road. Yeah. And that boy ran as fast as he could. But that caterpillar crawled right back, even before the second boy could cross the road. So he went up to the caterpillar. He saw what his little brother had done. He said, "Caterpillar, would you please move off the road?" He said the magic word too. And you know that caterpillar, take our caterpillar, and it moved off the road. He ran as fast as he could, but that caterpillar crawled right back even before the biggest boy could cross. Oh my goodness. The biggest boy, what was he going to do? He went right up to that caterpillar and he said, "Get off the road." He was so mean. You know what that caterpillar did? That caterpillar turned around and looked at that boy and opened his mouth really wide. And he swallowed that boy down whole. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The 2 other boys were looking and they said, "What are we going to do? Our brother got swallowed by a caterpillar." Well, the 2 boys, they didn't want to go home and tell their mother their brother got swallowed. They ran into town as fast as they could. And they got all the men together. And the men got their pitchforks and their hoes and their shovels. And they said, "We'll take care of that caterpillar." But when they got there, that caterpillar turned and looked at him, and he opened his mouth as wide as he could. And those men were so scared, they ran as fast as they could back to the hardware store. Well, the boys didn't know what to do, so they went back into town, and they got all the women. And the women said, "Oh, we'll bring our tools." And they had all kinds of tools. They had shovels and hoes and forks and spoons and big purses and a great big frying pan. Now, there was this little old woman. She was kind of bent over, and she said, "I'll bring the frying pan." And she took that frying pan, and when they got to the caterpillar, well, you know what happened? That caterpillar opened its mouth. Whoa! And those women were scared, but that little old woman, she said, "Oh, no, 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 you don't scare me." And she took that frying pan and she turned that thing around. 1, 2, 3, and boom! Bopped that caterpillar right on the end, and that boy shot out of the caterpillar, and he was good as new. Now, those women, they said, "What should we do with this caterpillar? Should we cut it up?" "Oh, no," said the little old woman. She said, "You know that boy was only swallowed because he didn't say the word please. Well, let him live. Let this caterpillar live." And you know, they led the caterpillar into the woods, and they fed that caterpillar every day. And one day it disappeared. They saw this great big thing hanging from the tree. It's called a chrysalis. And it wasn't long after that disappeared. But those old women of that group, they saw it, that great big butterfly flying away. Now, you know that boy from that day on, he always said, please. And that's the story of the giant caterpillar. All right, what other story shall we tell today? I know. There's a story I know about a goat. A goat. There was a nanny goat one time. You know how to sound like a nanny goat? Bah. Let's hear you do it. Bah. The nanny goat had 7 kids. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids. They were all ages, 7 kids. And they ate a lot of food. And you know, every day she had to go and find food for these kids. She had enough in her cupboards to last maybe 2 days, but she knew she needed to go out and find some more food. So she gathered all of her kids together and she said, "Now, I'm going out to find some food for us to eat. I could be gone for 2 days. You know there are dangerous things all around our house, so I want you to stay in the house, lock the door, and don't let anyone in. And when you hear me come home and I say, 'Mama's home,' you'll know to open the door." Well, they all said, "Yes, yes, Mama, we'll do that, we'll do that." Now, before she left, she kissed each one of them. 7 kisses. She went out the door, she closed the door, and the littlest one locked that door. Now, it just so happened that outside there was a wolf, and he had been listening all the time, and he heard what that mama goat said. He thought to himself, I'll wait a little while, and then I'm going to see if I can get in, because I sure would like to eat one of those little baby billy goats. Well, he waited and he waited, and he thought he waited enough time. And then he went to the door and he said, "Hello, my children, Mama's home." "That's not our Mama. That's not our Mama. You sound like the wolf. You're here to eat us up. Our Mama has a very sweet voice. We know you're not our Mama." Well, he forgot about that. The wolf forgot that the Mama had a very sweet voice, so he went away and he found somebody who gave him a big piece of chalk. and he chewed on that chalk. It softened his throat on the inside. And so when he went back, he went up to the door and he said, "Mama's home." And they went, "Oh, it's Mama! It's Mama! Hear her voice, it's so sweet." But he had put his black paws up on the window. They said, "Wait a minute, you're not our Mama. Our Mama has white feet, not black feet. You're the wolf, and you're here to eat us." Well, the wolf ran away. Now he had to figure out some way to get in to get those kids. Well, he went to the miller, and he got some flour, and he put it on his paws, but it shook right off. So then he went to the baker, and he said, "You know, my front paws hurt so much. Can you bake me something to put like some dough over my paws and it'll heal them?" And the baker said, "Well, all right." And so he did. And then his paws were white. Well, he went back to that house where those kids lived. And he said, "Hello, Mama's home." And they saw the white feet up against the window, and they heard that sweet voice. And so they opened the door, and in came the wolf. Now they all ran this way and that way. One went under the table, one hid in the bed, one went into a big pot on the stove, one went under the stove, one climbed up into a lamp, and one of them hid in the big old clock and closed the door behind him. Well, that wolf went around and he gobbled up this one and that one, swallowing them whole, each one, except for that last one. And he didn't even realize he'd only swallowed 6 kids. He went outside and he lay down under a tree and he fell sound asleep. Well, the littlest one, he could hear somebody snoring, so he snuck out of that clock and he looked around. There was the wolf. The wolf was lying there sound asleep, but he didn't know what to do. He could see the wolf's tummy moving around this way and that way, and he knew his brothers and sisters were stuck inside the wolf's tummy. What could he do? So he started walking to find his mama. And you know, he found his mama and brought her back home, and she saw that wolf and she said, "I know what to do." And so she opened up that wolf's stomach and all the kids came out. They were kind of slimy, but they were okay, scratching their heads. "Oh, where have we been?" And then she said, "Littlest one, help me." And they put these rocks inside that wolf's tummy. And you know, they sewed him back up, and when he woke up, he could not move. He had the hardest time walking, and suddenly he realized he was full of rocks, and he fell over dead. And that was the end of the wolf. And the kids never, ever, ever opened their door again to anyone except their mama. The end. Now I have a story from the Ozarks. From the Ozarks. It's called the Sally Bally. Once upon a time, there was a boy. His name was Jack. Now, you know, there are lots of stories about Jack. And Jack loved his grandma and grandpa. How many of you love your grandma and grandpa? Yeah, me too. Well, they lived down in the Ozarks, and they had apple trees. They had apple trees everywhere. They grew apples and they would pick them and eat them. Oh, but they also would make applesauce. They also made apple cider. And everyone for miles around could smell those apples cooking. Oh, they smelled so good. Cinnamon, sugar, oh, in a big black pot outside. Now, just so happened that there was this creature that lived in the woods down in the Ozarks, and his name was the Sally Bally, and he loved applesauce. But he was so big. Why, when you looked at him, oh my goodness, his head almost went up to the clouds. He was so big, and he was big around, and you could hear him coming. He would stomp, boom, 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 boom. Now, Grandma didn't like it that this Sally Bally would show up, reach down, pick up her little pot of applesauce, and swallow it whole. Made her so angry. She said, "I've got to get rid of that Sally Bally. I don't like it that he always takes my applesauce." Well, Jack was coming down to see Grandma and Grandpa, like I said. You know, he visited often, and he loved those apples, and he loved that applesauce, and he loved apple cider. But when Granny told him about this Sally Bally, he said, "I got me an idea, Granny. I know what I'm going to do." And he got a great big rope. He said, "I'm going to lasso that Sally Bally." "How you going to do that?" "Well, I'll just swing my rope around, and I'll catch him." She said, "You don't know how big that Sally Bally is. He's big." He says, "Big as the sky. And he's this big around. Why, he'll just eat you up." He said, "No, he won't, Granny. Grandpa and I will set a trap for that Sally Bally." And they got this big old black pot that Granny fixed her applesauce in, and they put in apples and cinnamon and sugar. Ooh, yum, yum, yum. It was going to be so good. Well, of course, the Sally Bally smelled what was going on. And he came. You could hear him stomping through the woods. Do it with me. Boom, 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 boom. He was coming through the woods. He was going to reach down and get that applesauce. Well, Jack, he got his rope ready. You got your rope ready? He started swinging it around and around and around and around. And as soon as the Sally Bally got close, he threw that lasso. But it only caught on the Sally Bally's thumb. And the Sally Bally saw what was there, and he took that rope and he swung it this way and that way. And Jack was moving this way and that way. And pretty soon, he flipped Jack right off of his thumb and over into the woods. Now, the Sally Bally then picked up that black pot and tossed it aside. But he wanted Jack. And he wanted Grandpa. He went looking for him. He threw that black pot aside, and Jack and Grandpa climbed underneath that pot. Yeah. But Granny was sitting on the front porch. It was her favorite place to sit. She was sitting in her rocking chair, and it was squeaking. And the Sally Bally said, "Where are them men folk? I want to eat 'em up." She said, "What? I'm really hard of hearing. Could you just come a little closer and I could hear you? He said, I said, where are them menfolk? She said, I still can't hear you. Could you just come a little closer? And he got way down by Granny. He put his ear right up next to hers. And when he did that? She grabbed her rocking chair that was squeaking, remember? Ee, ee. She threw it in his ear and she jumped in and she started rocking. Ee, 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 ee. And why, it was driving him crazy. He was banging his head this way and that way and this way and that way. And finally, he hit himself on a rock and he just fell over. Granny said, oh my goodness. She jumped out of his ear, grabbed her rocking chair. She went looking for Grandpa and Jack, found them underneath that big old pot. She said, look what I did. He said, oh, Granny, what are we going to do? And Grandpa said, I got an idea. Let's just cover that Sally Valley up with dirt. And that's what they did. They started shoveling. It took them many days to cover him up with dirt. But when they were through, they planted apple trees all over that Sally Valley. And they say when you go down to the Ozarks, it's hard to tell the difference between one of the real Ozark hills and that Sally Valley hill that's still there with apples on it. But from that day on, Granny made applesauce for everybody because the Sally Valley was no more. The end. Now, I have a story. I know that all of you love to go to the library, don't you? Mm-hmm. And you love to get those books. Some of you can read books. Some of you can listen to books. But you love books. I've seen you in the library picking out your favorite books. Well, I know a story about a little girl named Tilly. She loved books too. She loved to go to the library and pick out her favorite books. But her favorite ones were scary stories. Any of you like scary stories or kind of scary stories? Well, she loved these scary stories. And her mama would always say, Tilly, I don't want you reading those scary stories. I don't want anything to make you have a scary dream or get scared about anything. You should not read scary stories. She said, okay, Mama. But you know what she did? As soon as her mama and daddy went to bed, she went into her bed. She pulled up the cover. Can you pull up the cover for me? Pulled up the cover over her head. She got out her little flashlight and her favorite book, and she started reading. She did this every single night. But one night she went in there. She pulled up that blanket. You gonna pull up the blanket with me? She got out her little flashlight. She opened her book and she started to read. When suddenly she heard at the window, scratch, scratch, scratch. She thought, uh-oh, what is that? She went to the window. She pulled up the shade, and there, outside, there was this big green head. It had red eyes. It had big, red, ruby lips. And it had long, red fingernails. And it said, do you know what I can do with my long red fingernails and my big red ruby lips? And Tilly, she pulled the shade down as fast as she could, and she ran and got in bed with Mom and Dad. And her mom said, you've been reading that scary book again, haven't you? Yes. She slept in bed with her mom and dad for 2 nights. Well, after those two nights, she wanted to read that book so badly. She went back to her room. She pulled up that blanket. You know how to do it. Pulled up that blanket, got out her little flashlight, started reading her books. When suddenly she heard it again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Oh, she went over to the window. You wouldn't think she would open the window, but she pulled up that shade, and there was that big green head again. And it said, see my big red ruby lips and my long red fingernails? Do you know what I can do with those big red ruby lips and long red fingernails? And Tilly pulled down the shade. She ran and got in bed with her mom and dad. And this time she slept there for 3 nights. But on the 4th night, she had to read that book. Because, we love to read our books. And so she went to her bed. She pulled the blanket up over her head. She got out her little flashlight. She started reading again when she heard scratch, scratch, scratch. This is making me so upset, Tilly said. She went to the window. She pulled up the shade. And there was that big green head again with the big red ruby lips and the long red fingernails. And it said, do you know what I can do with these long red fingernails and these big red ruby lips? And Tilly said, no. What can you do with those long red fingernails and those big red ruby lips? And she said, And that green head disappeared. And Tilly went back to reading every single night. And that was the end of that story. So let's close with a little song, all right? You know this song. It's good to have a little spider, right? Let's do it. The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again. Happy Halloween.